In section 1.2, we're learning how to add integers, and we did that in class with our tile separator manipulatives. So we're going to take notes on what we did in class on adding integers, so we have something to look back at. So when we use manipulatives, whenever we see a plus sign, we read that as put on. So that means we're going to put a piece on to our mat or wherever we're putting our manipulative. So whenever we see plus, we think, okay, we're going to put something on. When we put together a positive one and a negative one, that would combine to give you nothing. Just like if you owed me $1 and I have to give you $1, those would cancel each other out. That would be 0. The same way, a positive one and a negative one cancel each other out. And we call a positive one and a negative one a zero pair. For our first example, we're going to look at how we add two integers that have the same sign. So we're going to draw what we would set up with our integer pieces if we were asked to add 3 plus 4. So we would take 3 of our plus signs, which represent each a positive 1. So we'd have 3 of our little pluses. This plus means that we're going to put on more pieces. And what are we putting on? We're putting on 4. So, and it's a positive 4, it's not negative 4, so we put on 4 pluses. Now we could simplify that by putting that all together. So we would take our 3 and put it together with our 4, and we would see in total that the 3 plus the 4 is positive 7. We have 7 positive pieces, so that's our answer, positive 7. And I realize that this is a really obvious example, but it gets a little less obvious when we start involving negative signs. For our next example, we're still going to keep the numbers so that they have the same sign. So both the 2 and the 4 are negative. So we're going to add a negative 2 and a negative 4. So let's draw the pieces that we would put on our mat to represent a negative 2 plus a negative 4. Alright, so we'll start with the negative 2. So we would use 2 of our negative pieces. And this plus means that we're going to put on more pieces. And what pieces are we going to put on? We're going to put on 4 of the negative pieces. So we'll put those on as well. So to simplify this, we just put all of those pieces together. So we'll take the 2 pieces and put that together with the 4 pieces. And we can see that a negative 2 and a negative 4 gives us a negative 6. There's 6 negatives there. The more interesting thing happens when we have to add numbers that have different signs. So for our second example, we'll do 2 examples where the signs are different. So the first one we'll illustrate is negative 2 plus a positive 6. So let's draw the pieces that represent a negative 2 plus a positive 6. Okay, so for negative 2, we would have 2 of our little negative pieces, and for positive 6, we'd have 6 of our little pluses. And the reason that we're not taking anything away is because we're adding it, which means we're putting it on. So we start with negative 2 and put on 6 of the positive pieces. There's no sign in front of the 6 to indicate that it's positive, so when there's no sign, we assume it's positive. Okay, so now we're going to simplify this. And in this case, it's a little bit different because we noted up top that if we have a positive and a negative, that makes a 0 pair. So these two, this one positive and this one negative, or really any of the positives with this negative, so these two together would add up to 0 or nothing. And these two together would add up to 0 or nothing. So I'm going to draw this now with the 0 pairs right next to each other. Okay, so we started with our -2, and now I'm going to move this piece over next to my one negative. I'm going to move this piece over next to my other negative, and then I'm still going to have these 4 pieces left over here. And like we said, each of these pairs here is a 0 pair. So really, this is worth nothing. So its value is 0. So that means that we can take it away and not change the value of the original expression. So we'll draw that now we can take this away and get rid of that. And now what we have left when this gets taken away is just those 4 positives. And so that means a -2 and a +6 simplifies to +4. Let's do another example of adding 2 numbers with different signs. All right, let's add a -7 and a +3. All right, so the first thing we would do is we would put on 7 of our negative pieces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this plus means now put on an additional 3 positives. So 1, 2, 3. Now we'd look for as many 0 pairs as we could find. So those 3 negatives we could combine with, those 3 positives we could combine with 3 of our negatives. So I'm going to move over 3 of these positive pieces next to 3 of those negatives. So actually let me move this negative over here next to that plus, and this negative I'll move over here next to that plus, and this negative I'll move over here next to that plus, which means over here we would still have 1, 2, 3, 4 of the negatives left over there. And so we were able to find 3 0 pairs, and so we would take these 3 0 pairs and remove them because they're really equal to nothing. And so to simplify, we could just get rid of them. Right? So we'll draw our final answer of what it would look like after we took those away. Right? And so all we'd have left are those 4 negatives. And so that means a -7 plus a +3 leaves us with a -4. So what we're doing here is we're finding as many 0 pairs as possible and removing them. So I'm going to write that here in the margin. All right, so to add 2 integers with different signs, you put the pieces on and then you find as many 0 pairs as possible and remove them. And whatever remains is your final answer. And that is the notes on section 1-2, adding integers.